everybody. This is Dave here at Pulp Alley, and today we're going to be talking about disadvantages in general. We had a player ask us to talk a little bit about impaired and hindrance, and I thought, you know what, it's a good opportunity to just talk about disadvantages in general. So before we get too much further, though, will you take a moment, make sure you get subscribed to our little channel here, hit that like button, hit that bell for us as well. So we're going to be talking real briefly about disadvantages, and then I'm going to get a little more in depth just about impaired and hindrance as well. We're also going to talk about some plans for the future, so you don't want to miss this video. Let's take a look at some things that could be considered to be disadvantages. You could look at an ability like unlucky, and that certainly has a disadvantage associated with it. It's not a separate disadvantage. The disadvantage is actually built right into the ability. It's unlucky. Then you have abilities that slow your characters, and those examples would be things like unearthly and armored and reanimated. So those are things. You have abilities sometimes that will impair some of your skills, and so we have dithering here. This doesn't impair a skill. Instead, it impairs your ability to do actions. So before you can perform an action, you actually have to discard a card. And if you don't discard, then it doesn't work. Of course, you have abilities such as Goon and Beast, and those completely prevent you from performing actions, but they also give you a little bit of bonus as well. You have Impetuous. That could definitely be considered a disadvantage, but of course it's kind of balanced out. Even abilities such as True Believer could be considered to be a disadvantage in there as well, and of course Brainy and Two-Fisted would be good examples of disadvantages as well, because Brainy gets rid of your brawl ability, and Two-Fisted gets rid of your shooting ability. So there's not really a chart to go down through and pick your disadvantages. That's just kind of a min-max thing, and it's not really something that we do in Pulp Alley. Instead, there are abilities that give you disadvantages, but you kind of have to go through the abilities list and pick out what you want rather than just going down a list of disadvantages and saying that, okay, I want to do this so I can get more points, sort of deal. Specifically, we're going to talk about impaired and hindrance a little bit more. So impaired can affect a lot of different things. In second edition, your recovery could be impaired, and that is the ability called Faint of Heart. There's an ability in there that if you take it, your recovery is impaired, and what that means is before you can roll, you've got to discard, and if you don't discard, you don't get to roll. There are abilities, there are things that can impair your movement, and what that does in second edition is if you want to move over 6 inches, you've got to discard a card. You could still move 6 inches normally, but if you want to go further than that, that's when you have to discard. There are abilities like dithering that impair your actions. So before that character can perform an action, you've got to discard a card. If you don't discard, then you cannot do it. So that's what impaired does. So impaired can affect a lot of different things. In general, what it means is that if you don't discard, then you can't do it. We're also going to look at adding more things that impair abilities or movement or recovery as the game continues to develop. There are already some NPC abilities that will actually impair your recovery, but there's not a player character ability that normally will do that. There's an asset, there's an item that can be used to impair an ability. Golgo's Venom will do that. So there are also going to be magic spells when we release our magic rules. There are going to be spells that specifically target certain things on an enemy to impair. So that can create more disadvantages for your enemy rather than just outright attacking them. So let's talk a little bit about hindrance. Now, hindrance, of course, is an actual ability in the book. So you can just simply take the ability that calls hindrance, that is called hindrance. And what it does is that it will typically hinder some of your skills like shoot, brawl, dodge, might, finesse, and cunning. If a skill is hindered, then what that means is before you roll those dice, you've got to discard a card. If you don't discard, then you suffer a -1 penalty. So there, the discard is kind of optional. If you don't discard, then you could take that -1 penalty. If you do discard, then you roll your normal number of dice. So hindrance is an ability that has a built-in disadvantage to it there, but you get to pick which one of your skills is going to be disadvantaged by the hindrance ability. All right. I hope that helps. I hope that kind of clears up a little bit about impair and hindrance and some of the other abilities. If you have any specific questions about any of the stuff that I named, be sure and leave a comment below. Be sure and get subscribed to our little channel. Hit that like button, hit that bell button, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.